Greg. Once again, we are reeling from yet another school shooting this morning. According to Education Week, this is an interesting statistic. In the 13th school shooting in 2023, the #1 cause of death for children now and adolescents is death by gunfire.
That's just remarkable. And this time it was an elementary school in Nashville. That was the target, leaving 3 children and 3 adults dead. So how do parents ease the anxieties felt by their children about going to school? And how can parents manage their own fears of sending their kids to school?
Dr. Brad Schwal, President and CEO of the Center for Integrative Counseling and psychologist, is here to share some insights with us this morning. Welcome. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank
Not
you.
on this occasion, but we're glad you're here.
Right. Thank you.
Well, and Dr. Schwal, let's start specifically with the kids. When it comes to how parents can really start opening up that conversation, tell us about some tips. How do we need to be when we begin that conversation and that dialogue? And how important are questions for the kids when communicating with them?
Right. So first, we do need to process our own feelings. So we need to be in tune and express with other adults, loved ones and friends, our anger, our frustration, our fear, our worry. That way we are available to our child. With older children, certainly it's fine to express those emotions. Children under 8 who aren't aware of what happened don't need to be spoken to about this. Now, there is a Dallas connection in this case, and so children and even younger children may know.
Can you talk about that Dallas connection?
Yes, so there is a connection with Park Cities Presbyterian, and that church is definitely wrapping around the family, the pastor of Covenant in Nashville, and so faith for them is important in coping. And it's important for parents to take the lead of the child. So the types of questions we might ask is, what do you know? What are your questions? And most importantly, what are your feelings? So we're giving a safe space for our child.
And go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead. Just I want to make sure that people understand that this is also the pastor of a local church here in Dallas, who became the pastor in the church in Nashville that has been victimized. So this tragedy, of course, extends across the country and around the world, but particularly it does have a North Texas tie.
Yeah, the daughter was one of the victims. You know, one of the things that occurs to me is that for a lot of parents these days, you know, your kid might find out about this before you find out about it, because kids have access to everything right now. So let's say your kid comes in and says, "Mom or Dad, I can't believe this happened. I'm scared to death." What is kind of the first thing you should say in that situation?
Ask them what they do know, and we do need to validate the emotion, that it is okay to be upset. Being able to express feelings is key to the healing process. We're watching for irritability, we're watching for difficulty focusing, we're watching for difficulty sleeping. We're watching for our kids because I know that even teenagers and our therapists at the center work with teens who are anxious. Anxiety might then be focused on what is happening with all of the school shootings. So we're watching for that over focus. At the same time, it's this balance of recognizing it's okay to talk about the feelings. In this particular instance, and just seeing posts talking about faith, you know, talking about where we do find that sense of peace and calm, even in the midst of the unpredictable tragedy and pain and hurt and suffering, which is unfortunately a part of our world.
And I think that kind of goes to something you said earlier, which is you got to work out your own feelings first, because if you're jittery, your kid's going to pick up on that. But to say, can you tell me just how do you feel? Yes. And let that kid say how they feel is real important, isn't it?
So important, and even just presence. So over the last couple of weeks, our therapists at the center actually have had personal connections to what has happened last week at Lamar and then this week in Nashville. And so even when I'm talking to them, it's that listening. It's that presence, it's showing that calm, and that's how we help our kids. And then certainly we do think about trying to understand what can we do. We look at that, but in the midst of grief, presence is key, and then we are watching for those stressors, that trauma response to thinking about how something like that could happen, and thinking again about the unpredictability of our world.
You mentioned some of these signs: irritability, inability to sleep, a preoccupation with the events. Seeing all those signs, when should a parent know that they should be seeking help for their child or even for themselves?
Well, first, I do believe that counseling can help us gain insight. And so anytime we are struggling and we believe that those worries are pervasive or interfering with our day-to-day functioning, it's important to seek professional help. So to have a very open mind to it, but certainly when we see that overfocus, when we see those difficulties that are caused by the stress from thinking about the event affecting day-to-day life, we for sure know seeking help is important.
You know, I want to mention one thing I heard earlier this morning I thought was really helpful, and that was that direct your child at a time like this to maybe some kind of purpose. It might not be directly related to this, but let's go give here or give there. The purpose of doing something, actually physically and intellectually doing something, can help ease the anxiety. Is that right?
Absolutely. So giving an action. So it might be prayer. It might be writing a letter.
Right.
It might be also realizing what can we do to show care to those around us. So thinking about others also helps us in dealing with grief.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time this
wonderful
morning.
having you.
Hopefully it was helpful to a lot of people who are having a hard time right now.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad, very, very much.